Hi everyone, I'm Nancy Leon, the training manager here at Emily's List, and I'm super excited for you all to be here today for our Managing Your Community as an Elected training. We really appreciate you all taking the time today to learn with us. So first, I just want to give you a little bit of background on what Emily's List is. We are the largest resource for women in politics, and we help recruit and train pro-choice Democratic women to run for office. And since our founding in 1985, we've helped elect over 150 women to the House, 26 to the Senate, 16 governors, and more than 1,300 women to state and local office. We've also had over 60,000 women reach out to us and say they're ready to run for office. So these trainings will give you the tools to set your foundation for your campaign journey and also for those of you who are already electeds. So to go through our agenda for today, we're going to start with some welcoming and housekeeping announcements, and we've already done some. We're going to talk about how to go from being a candidate to an elected official. We'll discuss how to keep your volunteers engaged once your campaign has ended. We'll talk about how to build power as an elected, how to power map, and then we'll do a quick Q&A section at the end. And some webinar norms. Firstly, invest in our time together. The more that you participate, the more that you will get out of these trainings. And all questions are valid, so please type them in the text box that you have available. And thank you to all the people who already sent in their questions via the text messages earlier today. We'll be addressing some of those during our Q&A section. And there will also be someone in the chat who will try to answer all the questions that you put in there. And lastly, all of our slides are internal, so we won't be sending you this PowerPoint, but we will be sending you a recording of this training so that you can refer back to it whenever you need to. All right, so for the webinar goals, I'm going to actually hand it over to our trainer for today, who is Molly Cohen, the Northeast Regional Director on our state and local team. And she's going to get started with these goals and take over the rest of the training. And I'll be back for our Q&A section. So take it away, Molly.
Hi, everybody. As Nancy said, I am on staff here at Emily's List. I'm the state and local regional director here. My states include all of New England, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland. And in addition to that work, my job and my passion, I also am elected myself. I serve as the vice chair on the select board here in Exeter, New Hampshire, where I live. The select board is a New England term for town council, essentially. So I, along with 4 colleagues, represent my town of Exeter. So I have been on both sides of this. I've run a campaign, I help women, I help elect women, and I also have run my own campaign and I've won. So welcome all of you. And let's get started. So what we want to do, the goals here, Nancy did a good job of going through them, but we're going to, learn and talk about how to transition your campaign relationships to relationships as an elected official. You're going to learn how to share and track your wins with your community. And you're going to learn how to map your community and how people can help you achieve your goals. Slide. Yeah. So here we go. So congratulations, first of all. If you're here, you likely won a race, or maybe you've been appointed to something and you're, looking at potentially running in the future. But we're so glad you're here. You're so amazing. We're so proud of you. But one of the things that you'll quickly realize that being a candidate is very different from being an elected. And in some ways, they're really, they're comparable skills, and in some ways, it's a whole new ballgame. So you'll want to transition your supporters to supporting you in your new role, and how can you use those skills, the skills that you used organizing and motivating volunteers to support you in your new role, which is governing. You'll want to build and maintain relationships, new and old, to help you achieve your goals and share your wins. And you really want to keep up the momentum. There's this, and and to, really stop and pause and acknowledge the moment in history now. There's a lot of stuff going on. And so you might need, and your supporters and volunteers might need a little bit of a break here. We have something really big to celebrate on next Wednesday. We also are in the midst of a worldwide pandemic, the likes of which we've never seen before or lived through. And there's, a real racial reckoning happening. So, there's a lot that you're coming into office and having to deal with right away. So I want you to really acknowledge that these are unusual times and you are going to need all the support you can get. Slide. So it can be difficult, or at least different, to transition from having staff, even volunteer staff, to when you have won your position where your staff might change. You might have nonpartisan staff. You might have staff that you actually don't get to hire and you might not trust for a whole host of reasons. And so, that's a different scenario to, having you pick your own staff, your own campaign staff, your own trusted volunteers, and having people work for you. But then I want you to remember that your campaign really did prepare you for this. You can't get elected or enact change by yourself. You motivated your community and you needed your community to get your agenda done. So what does it look like to transition over, and how do you do that? Slide. So one of the best ways to continue to engage your supporters and volunteers is to just keep communicating with them. Keep that social media presence alive. Keep tweeting if you were tweeting during the campaign. Keep having phone calls. Keep reaching out when you need something. And then you want to keep up, some of the campaign activities that I'm sure you did. I'm sure we're all zoomed out, but we've got to keep going. So, have virtual town halls, have group meetings, send people holiday cards and thank you notes. Make sure to do constituent calls. And you can send an email to your campaign list to have them opt into your official list. And you should really work to keep digital supporters in your orbit so that they know what you're doing and what your priorities are. So now let's talk about building power as an elected, and who should you build relationships with? So presumably, if you are on this call, you should be, building community and relationships with leaders of the Democratic Party. Now, in my role, with the town of Exeter, my position is actually nonpartisan, which is what a lot of municipal positions are. They are, you can either run as a partisan Democrat, but then you govern, and your staff and your position is truly nonpartisan. So if you've run, sort of a nonpartisan campaign that is outside of the Democratic Party, it's good to build relationships with leaders of the Democratic Party, because now you're in office and you can speak to everybody. You want to also build relationships with other people in your caucus, your electoral body, the town council, the city council, whatever it is you're serving on. Because unless you ran for, there's really no position that you would run for that you would be in a vacuum and be able to make all of the decisions all by yourself. So regardless of what your position is, you want to be making and building relationships with the folks that you're going to need to work with to make change. And then, the other things that you want to do is you want to meet other electeds at various levels. So, one of the things that if you are, a municipal leader elected at the municipal level, you want to make sure to have good relationships with your state senators, your state reps, your congresspeople, your US senators, all the way up and all the way down the ballot. You want to make sure that you are connected with them regardless of party, and regardless of, if they supported somebody else in the race, or, what those dynamics are. Think about this as a reset. You get to build the relationship in your official capacity, which is an elected. So the other thing that you'll want to do, and you'll probably have spent a good time talking through, meeting with leaders of local organizations that either have a voting mass or a voting block, or who are instrumental in getting things done in your in your town, in your, in your district, and whatever it is that you're representing. But you'll want to make sure to maintain those relationships and then reach out to the people who, you didn't necessarily need their support or want their support, frankly, to win. But when you're an elected, you are working for everybody, regardless of where they were in the campaign. You'll also want to make and build relationships with key constituency groups in the district, whether those are, business leaders, name it, name a constituency you're going to want to, have relationships, and especially the ones that you are going to want their support when you're trying to pass legislation and pass your agenda. You'll also want to build relationships with key local business owners. It's much easier as an elected to approach folks now because you've sort of proven that I did what I said I was going to do, which was get myself elected, and now let's work together. I also want to talk about people who didn't vote for you. Now, there are some people who, quite frankly, you're never going to convince. Anything you say will be the wrong thing, and forget them. You don't need them. You're never going to be, you don't waste your time thinking about how to please them or build relationships with them. But what you should do is you should think about, are there groups in the community who didn't support you, but you should build relationships with because you're going to need their support, or because you don't want them to come out and oppose you in passing your agenda. So be strategic about that. And one of the ways, to talk about this when you're talking to people like this is to say, I didn't win everyone's votes, but I'm still serving for you and I will speak for you. Another thing that I'll say is you have to respond, even if you don't like the person, and even if they're in opposition, you or your staff, if you have staff, should respond to them. And then this is a way to, if not earn support, at least earn respect. And that is to acknowledge that they are part of your constituency, they matter. And I'm not talking about the people who, you're never going to win over. I don't know that it's worth talking to them. But if they reach out to you for help, for a question, absolutely respond to everybody. I can talk sort of about my own experience. When I ran for the town council here in Exeter, there were two very vocal board members three actually, and there were three pretty vocal board members who didn't want me to serve on the board. And they didn't think that I had enough experience. They thought that I had two very young children and a full-time job, and how in the world would I have time to spend on town issues? I had never served in a volunteer capacity with the town before. And so they really, really campaigned for one of my opponents. And it was hard and it was hurtful at the time. But what I've been able to do in the 3 years that I've been serving on this board is really show up and do exactly what I said I was going to do, even if they didn't agree with me. And actually during the campaign, one of those members, based on how vigorously and respectfully I campaigned, she ended up endorsing me. And then the two that didn't, who I needed their support during, passing certain things, and, some oftentimes would vote against me. In the past year, especially with my handling of the pandemic, they've both come around and are actively supporting my reelection campaign, which is exciting. And it is just, you don't have to change who you are. You can stand firm and stand strong, but you're going to make relationships as an elected that can potentially change the landscape for you the next time you run, or even while you're serving. The other thing that I want to talk about is, sorry, Nancy, can you just go back to the, sorry, I have a lot to talk about here. The other thing to do while you're, and this is, sort of who should you build relationships with, but also maintaining your volunteers. You want to have people who are armed and ready to support you when you have to make a big decision that is controversial. A lot of the things that you vote on are not controversial, and usually it's a unanimous vote. But sometimes you make controversial decisions, controversial choices, and you want to, in addition to this list, you want to also have your list from before, the supporters and the volunteers. You want them armed with information so that they can go out on your behalf and have the information that you want, your position, so that they can advocate and help you build relationships with people on this list. All right, now I'm ready for the next slide. Thanks, Nan. Okay, so learning your new workplace. No one gets things done alone, and not everyone is motivated by the same things, even when your commitment is to what is right. So what you need to do is you will need allies to accomplish your goals, and that means really getting to understand your fellow electeds, their priorities, and especially how you can work together. You'll want to build strategies to lobby fellow members. And you want to power map the body you are in, as well as your community, to determine how to work with the people you need to work with. And what I'm talking about are, some members are moved by power brokers. Some people are really influenced by a large outpouring of support. Some by statistics and graphs and charts. And so you need to know who you're talking to at any moment. So for example, there is a member that I currently still serve with, and whenever I need her, I'm not sure how she's voting, and I need to get her to vote on my side, what I do is when, before COVID, when we were in person, I would pack the room. So I would use my volunteers from 2 slides ago to turn out and pack the room and support my position. Now, because we're all online, I just get people to call in and, and stay on the line and show, physically show up and say, this is what I want and what I need. And I can always count on her vote because I've given her the confidence that this is what the people in our town want. Now, there are people who that works the opposite, right? Like they want to be contrarian or whatever. There was another member, she's not on the board anymore, but she would only and always listen to this one person. And sometimes I could get that one person to call her and lobby her. And that was a good day. I didn't always need her vote, but I could do it. And so, you need to spend some time investigating and understanding how your workplace works. The other thing that I want to touch on here is sometimes you'll think that you have an idea that is so simplistic and simple that you would think, well, obviously this has been tried before. I can't be the first person to think this, so I'm not going to suggest it. And always suggest it because probably it's a really good idea and you should do it. Now, it's always, and the other thing is you're working with staff who have a variety of levels of professionalism. So if you're elected to, for example, a state legislature, you have to understand that the staff that staffs a lot of the building, a lot of the meetings, they're partisan staff and they turn over based on who is in the majority. And oftentimes they are not the smartest people about certain policies. So trust your gut, trust yourself, and trust that if you think you have a good idea, to mention it and speak up, because odds are it is a good idea and you should speak up. Okay, I'm ready for the next slide. Okay, let's talk about power mapping. So first, what is power mapping? It is a tool to help you organize who is important and influential in your community. So you can use this to prioritize who is most important for you to meet with and talk to. Who are you going to build relationships with? It can help you understand who is important and influential in your community, who's going to move votes in the and then remember, it's not always obvious. Sure, someone might have the most power in name on a committee, but do they seek the counsel of another committee member? Do they seek the counsel of the town manager, of the mayor, of the governor? It's really important to sort of understand what the power mapping situation is in any sort of situation, whether it's a vote, whether it's your body, whether it's your constituency, you get the idea. So let's do a little exercise here. And let's say that you're trying to pass a bill. You know, the mayor and most of the city councilors are on your side, but the head of the local union is trying to make up her mind, and all your other electeds are going to follow her lead. You definitely want to make sure you have a good relationship with her and hear what she thinks. So what you're going to do here, there are most influential people at the top, of course, and least influential, and then who supports your position and who opposes your position. And you're going to put all of the different people that you can think of that you're going to need in any given situation, passing a bill, lobbying for power, whatever it is that you want to do. And that's how you can sort of determine who gets most of your attention. Because sure, it's fun to talk to your supporters who think you're amazing, but sometimes that's not going to be the most important person or people or constituency for you to talk to. And so doing the power map will really be beneficial to helping you decide who to talk to and what to say. Next slide. So the other thing that you want to do is you want to amplify your wins as they happen. So you'll want to bring more people and validators into your team. And then the other thing that I want to say is, like, sometimes you're an insider, sometimes you are the system, sometimes you're an outsider. And so it helps to sort of know which side you're on, right? So you want to work inside and outside the system to create change. So you want to, if you want to pass something and fundamentally change something, how something is done, that means you're the outsider, right? If you're wanting to stay the same and preserve tradition, you're the insider. So you sort of understand how this works. And you want to really sort of learn how to empower both sides and work on both sides if you really want to get things done. So I'll give you an example here of something that I did, especially after the George Floyd murder and the Black Lives Matter protests this summer. I really wanted to take a look at our policing, their training, their standards, and I wanted to see sort of what was happening in our own local police department, which on the surface, there are no racially motivated murders, there are no protests. The police chief here is actually very progressive. However, I would get reports of, police brutality, in particular with people who are experiencing homelessness and are unhoused, and people at a lower economic schedule. So, like, if people, didn't have a place to go and weren't bugging anybody, the police would get involved and it would be really confrontational and ugly. And so I worked with the police chief, got his buy-in, and made it his idea to establish a stakeholders commission to examine the role of policing in our town. And what we did was we brought together all of these different stakeholders. We have the local founder of the Black Lives Matter person on the committee. We have, some business owners. We have a couple of cops. We have a private school here, so we have the head of security there. There's often racial tension around, some of our international students. And I wanted it to have the most buy-in from the police, because I think what we need to do is we really need to evaluate what the training looks like and what is acceptable in terms of force. And so I was able to work, with different groups and different people who are stakeholders in establishing this commission. We've just got started, so I'll let you know how it goes, but I'm really excited that we were able to get that off the ground. And then you want to, engage your list and grow your community of supporters at the same time. So another example, we, early in the pandemic, I think it was maybe April, when states were going into lockdown, the science on masking was really new and coming out. And we pressured our governor, who is a Republican here in New Hampshire, to issue a shelter-in-place order. And cases kept going up. People weren't, live free or die up here. People weren't sort of respecting the science or the seriousness of the pandemic. And so what we did was we worked to establish a mask ordinance because the governor refused to mandate a statewide ordinance. So it was left to local communities. So what we did was we carefully and thoughtfully wrote one. We engaged a lot of supporters. We passed it by a slim majority, but we got it passed. And then we've had our local emergency management director, who happens to be our fire chief, functions in that way. And he comes in, and every select board meeting, he gives a report about our response to COVID. And so he, in the last, this probably happened at the beginning of December, when things were really peaking because of the Thanksgiving break. And he gave a report that said, Exeter, New Hampshire's numbers, we are the lowest, have the lowest amount of COVID cases and COVID deaths in New Hampshire for a town our size. And he said, and I really credit the mask mandate that we put in place before the governor put one in place, months before the governor put one in place. We helped local business owners, develop new systems of serving their customers, and we were really responsive and really cut down on the amount of activities that we allowed the town to do. And so what he said during this meeting, which was unprompted, was that our work as a board and the leadership from the board was the reason that our town was doing the best in the entire state for towns of our size. And so the next day, I emailed him and I said, hey, Chief, do you think you could write that as an op-ed? And, exactly what you said yesterday. It was really good. And, it'll really make people in our town believe that they're doing their part by wearing their masks. And so he did. And then I had some of my supporters amplify that on social media and say, thank you for your leadership, Molly. It was, you've been really crucial and critical in our COVID response. So those are sort of the things that I'm talking about when I say amplify your accomplishments. I didn't need the chief to go in and say, thank you to Select Board Vice Chair Molly Cowan, she saved the day. Like, that was not, that's never going to happen. But what I did do was I said, I want you to write what you said, which was praising the actions of the board and quelling the very vocal but very small minority who said, we were intruding on people's rights and we shouldn't wear masks and blah, blah, blah. So that's just an example of how you can use your accomplishments and how you can sort of build the relationships between the people who aren't likely to publicly endorse you. They have but can be really helpful and are really powerful voices. Okay. I think this is one of the last things that we'll talk about, but I want to mention it because there are going to be a lot of people who are interested in getting your backing and getting your support. And I just want to say this. I want to say to be mindful about how you use your political capital, because you have spent so much time, building a brand, working on the things you believe in, talking to people, conveying who you are as a person, and then who you associate with is really going to matter, because that becomes then part of your brand. Now, I don't mean to say you should never endorse people or you should never help people, but just really be mindful and be really cognizant and inquisitive about who is asking for help. And so, I can think of a couple examples for, we live in New Hampshire and we have the first in the nation primary, and all of the presidential candidates, you trip over them every primary season, and they're all looking for support and endorsements. And so I always caution all of my candidates and all of my women to be strategic. Who are you going to support? Who are you going to back? What are you going to put your name on? Same with legislation. If you're in the state house, is there a particular member whose bills always die because they're impossible to deal with and really annoying? Like, don't put your name on those bills. And same with, where you show up. Now, there's a part of a campaign and part of a staffer that says, like, go anywhere that you want to be, or go anywhere that anybody will have you speak. All you need is a room of 2 people and a candidate will show up. But as an elected, I want you to be mindful that this is your reputation and this is your name. And so be inquisitive and think about who is benefiting and who is going to look at your appearance and say, this is something that raises red flags. So, I don't know that I love ending on that note, but I know that we have some really excellent questions that are coming. And so I will turn it over to Alyssa. Or Nancy.
Yes.
I don't know.
So thank you so much, Molly. It seems like a lot to be an elected official and to have to juggle so many relationships. So our first question will actually be about something we just talked about working with the other side. So the question is, how do you balance working together with the other side to get things done for constituents with the potential downside of giving them a political win?
That's an excellent question. And I think that I think that you have to be mindful and strategic here, because if you're giving the opposition a political win because you've compromised to the point of not doing what you believe is right for your community, then that is something that you shouldn't compromise on and you shouldn't give them a win. But ultimately, you were elected to get a job done and you were elected to make people's lives better, and you can take that win just as much as they can. So that's what I would say. There is a balance here, but there is also the possibility of looking like you are so stubborn that you won't work with the other side, which is not why you want to be in office. You want to be in office to make people's lives better.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it also just goes back to communicating with your community about what your goals were from the beginning and then celebrating them when they do happen. And hopefully people will focus on that instead of like the other side. So
that's right,
awesome.
Nancy.
Yes. All right. So the next question is, I would love to get advice on how to create and maintain good relationships with local reporters and other members of the press, like editors.
That's a great question. And what I've noticed is, in my small town, there's not very many reporters. But I have also, in addition to, being an elected, I have served as the comms director for my local Planned Parenthood affiliate. So what I would say is, reach out, always be available. Start calling, offer to have coffee. I mean, a Zoom coffee, phone call, whatever it is. We're going to be vaccinated soon, so hopefully the in-person coffees are coming back. But also to really be available. I've had to comment on some pretty sensitive things in my official capacity at the select board. And one of the things that I do is I will always respond immediately if a reporter reaches out and say, I'm busy, I can't, I'm in meetings for the next X hours, but if you send me the question, I'll write a response. What is your deadline? And then, that keeps the trust and the communication. Now, occasionally there's been a question that I didn't want to answer and I just like, oh, sorry, I was so busy that I couldn't get to you before your deadline. But I've only done that once, and it was strategic, and I, I made that decision to do that. But really, be available, be honest. Don't go off the record because there's not really any such thing. But what you can do is you can just have a chat that says like, this is a getting to know you chat, and I want to just talk. I'm not imagining that this is an interview. And most all reporters would completely respect that. So I think my top things are be accessible, reach out first. And then, if you have press statements, or if you have a press release, or if you're doing something really exciting, like just let them know, text them and let them know.
Yeah, I think that's really good basic advice. I didn't even know that, so good to know. The next question is it better to transition your campaign social media accounts into accounts for your elected position by changing like your name or changing the type? Or is there a reason that you should not do that and instead create new social media accounts for your elected position and keep them separate from your campaign social media accounts?
So that's another good question. And truly, it depends on bandwidth. Do you have the official side staff to run that sort of operation? And if you do, then absolutely, yes, you should do that. Something that, talks about legislation that you're passing, talks about your activities, talks about, mutual aid opportunities, that sort of thing. If you don't have that, for example, I have one Twitter account, one Facebook, one campaign Facebook, and I update it all the time, right? Like I use it as my official and my campaign side so that I don't have to worry about the compliance issues. Because the other thing is you can't be political if you're transitioning into a state, or official. It's very important that you keep that on the official side, especially if you have your official side staff running it. They can't be political. So I would say it depends more on your own bandwidth and how much actual staff you have.
Yeah, that makes sense. So case by case basis and depending on capacity, maybe yes, maybe no.
Yeah.
Cool. So next question is, I am an appointed member of a local transportation commission with plans to run for elected office in the future. What advice do the panelists have, or do you have, on engaging the community in this capacity?
So that's a great question too. I think that you are very free to hold listening sessions. You're free to call up the people who are in power. We went through that power slide. You in your official capacity can do all of that. And then when you transition over to campaigning, it'll be a little bit different. You'll have to approach those relationships differently. But it would be a great opportunity to reach out and get the people that you want on that list that we talked about before to take your calls, because, people take calls from electeds, especially if they want to talk about official stuff. So I would say focus on building, focus on, the transportation issues that come up. They're incredibly important and everybody has one. So, hold some listening sessions. Hold some, brainstorming sessions with just your constituents. So don't make it partisan at all. And, get to know what people are talking about first in that one lane, and then, it'll just naturally sort of broaden up.
Yeah. We also have later this month a fundamentals of running for office training where we kind of talk about building your community before you actually run. So keep an eye for that if that's interesting to you. Okay, so our second to last question. How do I grow my community, and how do I understand the needs, motivations, concerns, and overall belief systems of this community in order to find the right messaging and tools to increase our effectiveness?
So that's a very big question. And I would say, the most important thing in all of this is to listen. As electeds, and especially the higher up you go, right? Like you can think of Chuck Schumer, who I'm sure hasn't listened to anybody for years. He is an incredibly effective legislator, but if you asked him what his local constituents, what the the local complaints are. He would have no idea. And that's
Mm.
fine. We're here to build the power and be the voices of the local community. So what I would say is spend a lot of time listening and asking, and then you'll hear the common themes. You'll hear what people want changed, what is working well.
Mhm.
And, you don't necessarily have to campaign on big structural change. Sometimes it's just, I want to serve because I care about my community, not because you are going into, sorry, my children are in the background shrieking. So apologies for that. But, oftentimes like people want somebody who cares about them. So you don't need to go into office, or you don't need to campaign for office running to change the world and then you're not effective. You can run to make sure that people have an advocate and a voice and know what their community wants. So my biggest advice for that question, and frankly for everybody running for office, is to listen. And no hate on Chuck Schumer. I think our country is better for his service.
True. Awesome. And our last question is, I would like to know how to respond to requests for policy change directed to me by community members. Regardless of whether I agree with the request or not, I want the community to know that I'm trying to make positive changes.
That's an awesome question. And I think, one of the biggest things to think about is sometimes, sorry, he's having fun over there, is that, sometimes change is, sort of incremental. So like, what are the steps that you can do to make sure that your community members are heard while also making things better in increments? Because big structural change, again, is oftentimes really hard, especially when you have to contend with other people who have to vote for the things that you want to change. So I would say, again, going back to our point of like the people who don't necessarily agree with you, you could, if somebody proposes something or wants something changed that you're like, this is a terrible idea, the best thing is to, not ignore that and to say, please tell me more about this, or, I'd like to know more about what your concerns are, because maybe there's some sort of common ground that you can then bring into something else that you're trying to do and say, well, this actually addresses what you're concerned about, and it might not be a perfect solution for you, but this is my priority and this is what I'm going to do. And then people feel heard, even though, they didn't necessarily get their way. So I think that, again, the most important thing is to talk to people and listen to what they say. And again, just really listen. People want a voice. People see you as a voice. People see you as a messenger of what they care about. And that starts with listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Molly. So that was our last question, and I just want to thank Molly again for sharing her wealth of knowledge and her experience of being an elected with all of us. And now we're just going to move into our closing. So I just want to thank you all again so much for attending our webinar today. We hope that you learned some valuable information that you can take with you on your journey in elected office. And I just want to remind everyone that we are going to be sending you this recording afterwards, and also a survey for any feedback that you have for us. That would be super helpful for future trainings. And we'll also be sending you information in emails for trainings that we have coming up this year, so keep an eye out for those as well. And I just want to take a moment to talk a little bit about our Emily's List Run to Win campaign, which is committed to training pro-choice Democratic women to run for office. So there's a few resources we want to make you all aware of. Firstly, most of you might already have come from here, but we do have a Run to Win Facebook community that you can join. And if you join, you can connect with women who have already been candidates, who are running right now, who are thinking of running in the future, and you can get a lot of advice for them, and overall just support from other women who are going or have the same aspirations that you do. And we also have our training center, which provides a lot of online courses and modules and different tools that will help walk you through a campaign. And I was also told that we just had a handout that was uploaded that has to do with this exact topic, how to transition from your campaign to an actual elected. So take a look. It's completely free. So sign up, and I hope that you all enjoy it. And lastly, just a quick thank you to our partners. We couldn't do these trainings without their support. And that's all. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We're going to be in touch very soon. And good luck, everyone.